You can describe your own dysfunction better than most people can describe their own jobs. Ask you why you keep choosing unavailable people and you'll give a clean, 3-sentence answer involving your father. Ask why you can't finish anything and you'll mention perfectionism, fear of judgment, maybe a controlling parent for good measure. You have the language, you have the framework, you have somewhere in your phone a note titled Patterns that reads like a diagnostic manual written about a stranger who happens to share your name. And nothing has changed. You are not confused about yourself. That was never the problem. You are, if anything, the least confused person in the room, fluent in your own wreckage, able to narrate it on command, in a dinner party, in a therapy session, to yourself at 2 a.m. staring at a ceiling you've stared at 100 times before, having the exact same thought you had the last time. Knowing has stopped being the obstacle. Knowing has become the hiding place. Here's the story you've been telling yourself. Once you fully understand why you do something, you'll naturally stop doing it. Insight leads to change. That's the deal. That's what all the books promised. It's a beautiful theory. It also happens to be almost entirely false. You have understood in granular detail why you avoid conflict for at least 3 years. The understanding hasn't once stopped you from swallowing what you needed to say in the moment it needed saying. You have understood your relationship with food or money or your phone with an almost academic precision, and the understanding sits there, filed and organized, doing absolutely nothing while the behavior continues on its own separate track, unbothered, undisturbed, running the exact same loop it ran before you ever named it. This is the part nobody tells you. Insight and behavior live in different rooms of the brain, and understanding one does not automatically open the door to the other. You can hold a completely accurate model of your own damage and still enact that damage flawlessly, on schedule, like clockwork, because naming a pattern was never the same operation as interrupting one. So why do you keep reaching for the naming instead of the interrupting? Because naming is safe, and interrupting isn't. Somewhere in the last decade, self-awareness stopped being a private tool and became a public performance, a personality, a thing you signal. I'm working on myself. I know I have attachment issues. I'm just very aware of my triggers. These sentences get said in first dates, in job interviews, in arguments, not as confessions, but as credentials, proof of emotional sophistication. And the trouble with a credential is that once you have it, you stop feeling the pressure to earn it again. You've turned self-analysis into a kind of currency, and currency, once collected, feels like it's already been spent well. Every time you catch yourself mid-pattern and think, there it is again, that's my anxious attachment, a small, quiet part of you registers this as a win. You saw it. You get credit for seeing it. The seeing feels like enough. It isn't enough. It was never going to be enough, but it feels like enough, and feeling is what your nervous system actually responds to, not the technical truth that you did, once again, exactly the thing you swore you understood too well to keep doing. This is the mechanism working against you in real time. The brain doesn't distinguish cleanly between "I solved this" and "I labeled this correctly." Both produce relief. Only one produces a different outcome tomorrow. Look closer at what the self-awareness is actually buying you, because it isn't clarity, it's cover. If you fully understand your fear of failure, you never have to test whether you'd fail. The insight becomes a permanent, respectable explanation for staying exactly where you are. "I know I self-sabotage" sounds like self-knowledge. It also functions conveniently as a lifetime exemption from having to try in earnest. Because if you tried and it went badly, that would be data. Insight, unlike action, never produces data. It just produces more insight. That's the trap closing. Not stupidity, not denial. The opposite. A mind so sharp that it can out-argue its own need to change every single time with material that is completely, painfully accurate.
You are not lying to yourself about what's wrong. You are telling yourself the truth over and over as a substitute for doing anything about it. Picture this compounding, not for a week, for years. You become extraordinarily good at understanding a life you are not living. You can predict your own next mistake before you make it, narrate it in real time as it happens, and still make it, because prediction was never the same skill as prevention. Friends start to notice the gap, how self-possessed you sound describing your problems, how little that self-possession ever seems to touch the actual shape of your days. Eventually, the insight itself becomes the identity, not a person who is becoming who they want to be, but a person who is remarkably good at explaining why they haven't. That's a real personality people build, quietly, without meaning to, one accurate observation at a time, each one a small, satisfying dead end. And the terrifying part isn't the stagnation. It's that stagnation, dressed in this much self-knowledge, doesn't feel like failure. It feels like depth. It feels like being the kind of person who really understands themselves, right up until you notice that the understanding has been doing the same lap for a decade and the life outside it hasn't moved an inch. So what's actually being asked of you here isn't more understanding. You have enough. You've had enough for a long time. What's being asked is smaller and far less comfortable. To act before the insight finishes clarifying, before it feels resolved, before you're fully ready, because fully ready is a state your analysis will never actually deliver. It was never designed to. Analysis resolves in the mind. Change happens in the body, in the room you don't want to have and have anyway, in the version of the day where you do the uncomfortable thing while still holding the fear you were hoping insight would first remove. It won't remove it. It never was going to. The next time you feel that familiar, satisfying click of recognizing your own pattern, pause before you file it as progress. Ask what it would cost right now, today, to do the opposite of what the pattern wants without waiting to feel resolved about it first. You already know what's wrong with you. You have known for a long time. Knowing was never the finish line. It was just where you decided to stop.